This session is called Hanukkah and Disciples of Yeshua. So in order to get a perspective on our next topic, let's start from the very beginning, because it's a very good place to start. Some of you caught that. In the beginning, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et ha'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light." Yehi or, as we discussed our last session. And there was light. Vayehi or. And God saw that the light was what? Good. It was tov. It was good. God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Okay, Genesis 1:1-5. At the beginning of God's creation of the universe, He issued His very first command, Yehi or, right? Let there be light. That light came forth with the brilliance of 1 trillion or more stars, right? Its radiance outshined anything our minds could imagine. Remember, this is before He created the luminaries, the sun, the moon, the stars. This light pre-existed any kind of celestial light that He made later. This light was filling everything. The light was so special that, at least according to one opinion, a person could see across the entire universe with its illumination. We have a quote here of Rabbi Elazar, who said, "The light that the Holy One, blessed be He, created on the first day was used by Adam to look and gaze with it from one end of the universe to the other." Something strange, however, happens in the creation narrative. As soon as God sees the goodness of the light, He immediately separates it from the darkness. Rather than allowing this divine light to remain and cover all of creation, the Holy One restricts the force of its illumination and allows darkness to share its dominion. The reason the special light could not intermingle with darkness and had to be separated from it is because this light radiated from the Creator Himself. As is written, God is light, in John 1:5. Therefore, this pure light can almost be considered an extension of God Himself. Because of its purity and sanctity, it was more than a soon-to-be fallen world could handle. Therefore, the Torah tells us that as soon as Hashem saw the goodness of the light, He immediately separated it from darkness. Our sages explained that this separation was not merely an untangling of light from darkness, but its complete removal. According to this legend, this hidden light, in the Hebrew term or haganuz, the light which is hidden, has since been stored away for the righteous in the world to come. Now Rashi explains, he says that God saw the wicked were unworthy of using this light, and therefore He set it apart, reserving it for the righteous in the world to come. So according to tradition, there was a spark when there was a time when the spark of this Or Haganuz, this hidden light, that original primordial light, was able to regain some penetration into our world. This was when the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would kindle the golden menorah in the holy sanctuary every single day. So let's briefly look at the role of this menorah in both the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash. And the Mishkan is the tabernacle, the Beit HaMikdash is the temple. After the children of Israel were delivered from the clutches of Pharaoh, they were taken to Mount Sinai and given the Holy Torah. And so within the Torah, God gave the children of Israel instructions on how to construct this wonderful tabernacle, this edifice that would be something that would be unique to the Jewish people, that He would be able to come and have a residence among the Jewish people. They could have a lasting, tangible connection to the divine presence that they had experienced at Sinai. And once the tabernacle was erected and inaugurated, the very first act was what? To light the menorah. Okay, we read in Numbers chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. It says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and say to him, When you set up the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand." Excuse me. And Aaron did so. He set up his lamps in front of the lampstand as the Lord commanded Moses. This holy act of lighting the sanctuary menorah allowed the glow of the Or HaGanuz to radiate into our world, if only in an extremely limited manner. Its fullness was to continue to be hidden away until an anticipated time much later. So, with that concept in mind, pardon me, let's fast forward roughly 1,500 years. One of the gospel writers saw a problem. He realized that light that was created at the very beginning should have continued to radiate into our world. But as we talked about previously, that supernal light from creation was hidden away and not revealed to the world since that time. However, in the coming of Yeshua, this person saw a resolution to this problem. He therefore wrote of another beginning, one that that told the world of how that light had entered the world once again. And you guys know the passage. I'm going to read it again, though. John 1:1. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made. Not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." So we get this picture here. When did this take place? Well, we know 2,000 years roughly from our time frame, but what part of the year? There's a lot of theories about that, okay? There's the traditional church theory that says December 25th, okay? However, there's been others that have proposed, which I tend to agree with, that Yeshua was probably born somewhere around Sukkot, okay? And so that how do they figure this? How do they come up with this? They do this by working to piece together a timeline based on the information that we're given in the Gospels, okay? So the timeline components are the visions of the priests, because remember Yochanan the Immerser, John the Immerser, his father was in the order of Abijah, right? Abiyah. And they use that component. They use the time of their service when they served in the temple. The age difference between John and Yeshua, Yochanan and Yeshua. And specifically, Zechariah, his service when that was happening. And they use all these things to make chronological determinations. And although we can't be 100% sure, we can't be dogmatic, it seems reasonable, though, that he could have been born around the time of Sukkot, as it works also into many other things that we learn about him in the Scriptures. Speaking of him tabernacling among us and various things, okay? Joseph Good has a good article on that if you want to look that up at some point. He uses this information to come up with this conclusion. But my question is, if this is the case, we can figure out the timeline and say, this is done. If this is the case, we can also see that if we back up the timeline roughly 9 months, then conception possibly could have taken place right around Hanukkah. Okay? So the light of the world entered the world around Hanukkah, possibly, potentially. And so the season takes on an even fuller meaning for his disciples, knowing this. So let's take, but I guess my question is, but is this good enough a reason for us to celebrate Hanukkah? Just because we think on a theory that he may have been conceived around Hanukkah, is that good enough reason to celebrate Hanukkah? No. So let's take a look at the Gospels, some of his teachings, and see if we can make some connections that strengthen Yeshua with Hanukkah and why we should be participating in its observance. First of all, Yeshua celebrated Hanukkah as part of his faith tradition, and we're going to come back to answer this question that Gabriel asked a while ago. Where is this found in Scripture? But before we get to that, we need to explore a few passages and talk about some other things. So John leads up to this event by recording two other teachings of Yeshua that relate to the central theme of Hanukkah. So let's look at these two right now. If you have your Bible and you want to open them up, let's go ahead and open up to John chapter 8. So in John 8, Yeshua, he still seems to be in Jerusalem from his Sukkot pilgrimage in the previous chapter, okay? So just a reminder, the Torah requires for Jewish men to make a pilgrimage up to Jerusalem, to the temple, 3 times a year. What are those times?
Shavuot, Sukkot.
Good. Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, Pentecost, or Sukkot, or Tabernacles. Okay, those are the 3 things. Those are the 3 times. And so, Yeshua, we find him still in the temple just the next chapter over, after we read all about him being in Jerusalem during Sukkot. So most likely he is staying over, not most likely, that either he's staying over or he has come back. We got to determine which. And we read about the incident of the adulterous woman, and then after this incident is over, Yeshua begins teaching once again. Okay, in John chapter 8 and verse 12, he says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Okay? So the Hebrew equivalent to the phrase light of the world, so light of the world, the Hebrew equivalent to that is or olam, or ha'olam. Okay? Light of the world, or ha'olam. Yeshua identifies himself as the or ha'olam, the light of the world. Okay? And so, historically, we've got to figure out what that means. But did it mean anything at the time of Yeshua? Now, I couldn't find any research to back this up, but if it did, if it had that specific meaning at that time, if it had any particular meaning outside of Yeshua using it for his own purposes, it most likely, when people would have heard that phrase, they would have associated it with these huge menorahs that were in the temple courts during Sukkot. Okay? And so we have these menorot that lit up the city of Jerusalem during the festival of Sukkot. Here's an account of this. And this is an account from the Mishnah with some expanded clarifications by a person here. So there were golden menorahs there in the temple courts with 4 bowls of gold on the heads of each, 4 ladders of each menorah, and 4 fledgling priests with pitchers of oil in their hands of 120 loaves. When they would pour into each bowl, they would take strips from the worn-out breeches and belts of the priests and use them as wicks. And there was no courtyard in Jerusalem that was not illuminated by the light of the Beit HaShoeva. Now, the Beit HaShoeva is the house of the water drawing ceremony. That's a whole different topic, but it has to do with the end of Sukkot and all that. It says, for the menorahs were 50 cubits high. And the Temple Mount was high, and the light shone all over the city. So 50 cubits is roughly 75 plus feet high. Okay, that's several stories, right? Those are massive, massive menorahs that have these bowls of oil that are, and the wicks are not these tiny little wicks that we know of candle wicks, they're rags that were from the garments, worn out garments of the priests. And they're blazing up there, and there's 7 branches in each one of these things, and they're blazing, okay? And so here's another connection between our Gospels and what we talked about earlier of how Sukkot and Hanukkah have this sort of weird connection, right? Have this sort of little bit overlapping concept here. So in the above passage that we just read in John chapter 8, Yeshua says he's what? He's the light of the world. He's the Or HaOlam, okay? But he also ties himself to the other concept. This is a little deep, a little esoteric, so follow me here. He's looking at these lamps, probably, and these menorah, and they're just blazing. And they're being lit by the priests. And what do we say about those menorah? That they sort of shine through that little bit of that original light from creation. And so Yeshua is tying himself back to this, or Haganuz, this hidden light. The light of creation that radiated throughout Jerusalem, bringing joy and peace to all who caught sight of them. Well, in the next chapter over, John records another incident in the following chapter. Okay? He tells his disciples in John chapter 9, verses 4 and 5, "We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming, when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Now, his point, basically, to his disciples, you only have a limited time to accomplish your mission. Okay? The mission is urgent. It's time sensitive. And you have to do about it. So we must ask ourselves the same question. You know, what are we doing to accomplish our mission in the limited time that we are given? We only have a limited time on this earth to accomplish those things. Are we working toward that end, or are we wasting our time consumed with the pleasures of this world? Now, I'm going to take a little bit of an aside to discuss this point of the Master making about making use of the light of day. There was a rabbi named Reb Zusha. And Reb Zusha, you may have heard the story. He was a very pious man, very godly man, and one day towards the end, it was on. He's basically on his deathbed, and his disciples find him just weeping uncontrollably, and they're like, Rebbe, what? Why are you crying? Why are you weeping so profusely? Why are you so sad? He says, well, I don't know how I'm going to answer him. He's like, what are you talking about? You've lived your whole life, righteously and holy and dedicated to Torah, mitzvot, and so forth, and you've treated everyone right, and so forth. He says, but I won't know how to answer him. Well, I said, what do you mean? He says, if he asks me, why were you not like Abraham and have the faith of Abraham? He said, I'll have an answer. Because you didn't make me like Abraham. If he asked me, why weren't you more like Moses, who was a great leader, the best there was? He said, if he asked me that, I'll have an answer. Because you didn't make me like Moses. But if he asks me, Zusha, why weren't you more like Zusha? What will I answer? Okay? In other words, why didn't you become everything that I created you to be? Why didn't you live up to your potential? Yeshua has a similar parable, and my Bible has run off. Let's see if I see. Gabriel, would you mind grabbing my backpack there for me? But if you'll go ahead, it's underneath that table back there. If you go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 12. A library. Thank you. Okay. Luke chapter 12, beginning in verse 42. The Lord said, "Who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom his master will set over his household, to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom the master will find doing so when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, 'My master's delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and to get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day which he does not expect him, and in an hour he does not know. And he will cut him in pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more." Yeshua demands that we are accountable for what he has entrusted us with. Okay? There was a rabbi, trying to remember how long ago, several centuries ago, and he said something that sounds pretty arrogant at first blush. Okay, he says, "I know that I have the intellect of 1,000 men." That seems pretty arrogant. But then he followed it up by saying this, "And therefore I have the responsibility of 1,000 men, and I don't take it lightly." And so, whatever God has entrusted each of us with, we need to first of all realize what that is. Because if we don't realize what that is, we may never live up to it. We may never live that out, right? But then we have to realize what that is and then work to fulfill that calling. Rabbi Tarfon said something very similar to what Yeshua said that we're all familiar with. But Rabbi Tarfon said it like this. He says, "The day is short, the task is great, the laborers are lazy, the wage is abundant, and the master is urgent." So we have an urgency upon us that our master is wanting us to learn about. And he says, work while the light is in the world. Even though he is not physically in the world at the time, there is a day that he will return, and his light needs to expand, and we are the people that take it to those around us, who expand it in the darkness. We need to heed our master's warning in this passage and work towards his kingdom while we are able. So those two passages of him declaring that he is the light of the world, one per chapter, lead up to this event in John chapter 10. And this is where we find the only reference to Hanukkah in the entire scriptures. John chapter 10, beginning in verse 22. At that time, the Feast of Dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter. Okay, Feast of what? Dedication. The Feast of Hanukkah. That's literally what it says, if it were written in Hebrew. And Yeshua was walking in the temple in the colonnade of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Mashiach, tell us plainly." Yeshua answered them, "I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness about me, but you do not believe because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. I and the Father are one." And so in this, Yeshua, he is... Why do they question him during Hanukkah? Evidently, there was some expectation of what was to be happening then, and light to be revealed at this time. It was an expectation. And so this is the only passage, as I said, that explicitly mentions Hanukkah in the entire Bible. This is the only passage. So throughout the Gospels, we regularly see Yeshua making trips to Jerusalem from Galilee in order to observe the festivals. Like we said, he's required. There's 3 times a year that every male is supposed to go up. But in the Gospel of John, we have him making a trek up to Jerusalem a few months after the last of the feasts, the festivals, with only one reason, it appears, to go up for this festival of dedication for Hanukkah. And so why would he do something like that? What's the point? Hanukkah was important to him. Why? Because it commemorates the rededication of his father's house. His father's house had been rededicated, and it was the source of light, and it's supposed to be that light that radiated out to the world. So let's continue on with Yeshua's teachings on the topic of light. Some more teachings that he has. Not only does Yeshua identify himself as the Or HaOlam, the light of the world, but he also says that we are to be miniature versions of that light, right? This is a passage in Matthew 5 that you guys are familiar with. We are each to be an Or Olam in our own way. So the Master told us in Matthew 5:14, he says, you. Okay? Everybody take the finger, point it up, and point it in. Me. He's talking about me. Okay? So you guys are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Now, I just thought about this. I should have gone back and researched this and added it in, but there's a theory proposed by, I believe it's Aaron Eby, that this topic right here that he's talking about is the light of the menorah lamps that he's talking about. That says a city set on a hill. A lot of times they think that's forest. They looking at the hillside, the forest is over there, and that you can see the lights on the hill and all that kind of stuff. But Yeshua most likely would have had this city on the hill being Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the city that everybody in the world goes up to. And these giant menorahs would have been seen from everywhere. Okay? And the light that they give would have given light to all in the house. What's the house? Ha-bait. The holy house, the temple. Okay? So there's a connection there. Yeshua tells us to shine our light, but what does that mean? What does that mean? It means go around and hand out Chick Tracts, right? Yeah. It means leave a Chick Tract instead of a tip at your table at your restaurant, right? One that especially looks like money, right? No, don't do that, please. Please don't do that. So how do we shine our light so that others can see? Because other people can't see inside us. And a lot of times we think our relationship with God, our relationship with Yeshua, is personal. It's personal. It's a personal thing. Okay? But it's really supposed to be an outward thing. It's supposed to be a communal thing. It's supposed to be an us thing. And so how do we let our light shine through if we're hiding it contained within us? Or, if you want to use Yeshua's terminology, under a bushel. Right? This is why Yeshua says that we are to shine our light in a way that others see our, what? Good theology?
Good works.
Our good hairdo? Our great necktie? You know? Our good works, as Joy said. Our good works. Oh my goodness, he's saying works. Okay? We're much more amiable to that in this room. But some people freak out over that. But I guess my question is, what are these good works? You know? We tend to define that in different social settings and social groups of what these good works are supposed to be. But Proverbs teaches us, in Proverbs 6:23, Proverbs teaches us, for the commandment, for the mitzvah, is a lamp. And the Torah, the teaching, is a light. Okay, let me read that again. For the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching is a light. And so in this context, the lamp Yeshua speaks of is the mitzvot, the commandments that we are living out in our lives day by day. And that light that we're shining through these works is the light of Torah. It's the light of Yeshua that's exposed through our actions. Now, there's a saying that says, that's very true, we judge others by their actions and judge ourselves by our intentions. Why is that? Is it because we can't see anybody else's intentions? We can only see their actions. And so other people are going to look at us and they're going to say, there's such and such type of person. They may be right, they may be wrong. But all they can see is the fruit hanging from our tree. Right? That all they can see is the fruit that we produce. And we produce the fruit by the actions of living out Torah. Yeshua is bringing attention to what the Father has already said. When the people of God live out the commandments, others will see the beautiful light of the Torah and glorify God. Because they will be fulfilling the commandments on which all the rest depend. They will be loving God and they'll be loving their neighbor. The people that see this will see, my goodness, these people are living right. These people are genuine and their God is near them. Okay? This is prophesied. This is prophesied in Deuteronomy. I think it's chapter 4. It talks about when you do all these things, these people are going to glorify God. Because they're going to say, man, what a great God they have to give them all of these commandments. To stick this all on them. You know? Basically to say, to set them up in such a way that what they do is right. And it honors both God and man. In the book Light by First Fruits of Zion, which I have a copy of there if you want to see what that looks like, they list out the decrees of Antiochus against the Jews as follows, okay? So this basically a synopsis of what Antiochus wanted to do, okay? He told the Jews, you shall profane the Sabbath, okay? You are going to profane the Sabbath. That's what he told them. He told them, you shall profane the festivals and the holy days. You shall set up idols. You shall eat unclean meats, unclean animals. You shall not circumcise your sons, and you shall forget this Torah business altogether. Okay? Well, let me follow that up. I'm about to be on your tail right here with the same thing. They make then an observation that historically, Christianity, unfortunately, has enforced the laws of Antiochus on the Jewish people, especially when they come to faith in Yeshua, in the Jewish Messiah, which is a sad commentary. I had a friend that told the story of a missionary, a Jewish missionary that came to his parents' church that he basically, to prove he was not doing any of that Jewish stuff that the Bible talked about anymore, he came and spoke to the church, and then it was right around the time of Yom Kippur, and it may be on Yom Kippur itself that he spoke, but either the day before or the day after, whatever. He asked to be taken out to eat catfish on Yom Kippur to show his denial of that. Okay? So this is the sad state of affairs that exists today. Okay? And it's not because of the Jewish people, it's because of Gentile followers of Yeshua.
Deep-rooted anti-Semitism.
It is. It's very deep-rooted anti-Semitism. Okay? And it's propagated by this by all kinds of lies. But basically what we're doing is we're taking what Antiochus wanted done and we're continuing his mission. Okay? It's very sad. Just 2 weeks from today, and this hits close to home, just 2 weeks from today, a lunatic went into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and slaughtered 11 people in cold blood, simply because they were members of the chosen people, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 11 people were targeted and gunned down with senseless violence because they were practicing the faith of their Jewish forefathers. They were doing all of these things that the spirit of darkness did not want done. that Antiochus did not want done. And they were hated for it. And everyone who does likewise will be hated as well. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
We are surrounded by spiritual darkness. The darkness does not like the light because the light exposes the darkness. Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 27 says, Ner Adonai nishmat adam. Ner, okay, the light of Adonai Hashem, the light of the Lord, Nishmat Adam is the spirit of man, or the soul of man. So, think about it this way. When we ignite a candle, it only burns for a limited amount of time. Okay, if you get the Shabbat candles, that's roughly like a 3-hour candle. If you light a little wick of candle, it's in paraffin, whatever, it only lasts for a limited time. But here's the big thing. When we ignite, when we put a spark on a soul, it will burn indefinitely. Not only that, but it has the potential to ignite others as well. So there's a difference between simply lighting a physical candle and lighting a soul. And hopefully we're going to light some souls today. When God breathed life into the man, when He breathed within him this breath of life, this breath that came from Himself, He put within him a portion of Himself, the very breath of God. I think you made allusion to that. Was it today or yesterday? Today. He blew into him a spark, so to speak. As is written, the passage above, the spirit of man is the lamp, of the Lord. Our sages tell us that due to Eve pursuing her husband to eat the tree of knowledge, death entered the world and thus extinguished this Ner Hashem, this lamp of God, lamp of the Lord. And ever since the first humans partook of the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, the light of the world has been diminished. Okay? Do you realize that this is one of the reasons in Jewish tradition that women light the Shabbat candles on Friday nights? It's an act of tikkun. It's an act of repair. Because Eve, the first woman, snuffed out the light of the world at the very beginning, women make this a practice of rekindling the light of the world and Shabbat. Okay? And bringing that holiness back into the world week by week. They are a symbolic rekindling of this Ner Hashem before entering into the Holy Sabbath. On both Sabbath and festivals, we elevate the mundane act of lighting candles to a spiritual act of service, transforming this natural event, this natural action, into something that's supranatural. It's above and beyond the natural realm of things. On Hanukkah, we do more than just light 2 candles. We light a total of 44 candles over the course of 8 days straight. We proclaim the miracle of Hanukkah by kindling these lamps. In esoteric terms, at the time of the lighting of the Hanukkah candles, there's a revelation of part of this hidden light, the Or HaGanuz. Okay, this is an esoteric thought. This great light hidden away from the beginning that we talked about earlier. And they connect it with the light of Messiah. This hidden light. And that's, they say, why the festival is called Hanukkah. Because it's a spiritual chinuk, which means preparation for our coming redemption. Okay? So now, anytime that you light those candles, the Hanukkah candles, you can think these are connected with the return of our Messiah. Right? And we are working towards that final day of redemption. So Yeshua, the light of the world, came to bring light to penetrate where darkness had multiplied. And it's our job as His disciples to imitate Him in the same manner and push back that darkness by shining the light within us.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it symbolic that we happen to be doing this in the darkest time of the season of the year as well?
It's a good question. Now, it is for us on this side of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works on the opposite side of the world, especially Alaska and different places like that.
Yeah.
So we can have that symbolism here, but I don't know that it's
Yeah.
universal.
Yeah.
Okay. So Hanukkah is a reminder of how important it is for us to shine our light into the dark world around us as children of the one from whom this blessed light originates. Now, what are some practical ways? We're going to do some discussion here. What are some practical ways that we can shine the light of Torah and Yeshua? We've got through talking about, of this connection. We see this spiritual connection now with the Hanukkah candles and Yeshua's teachings, and Yeshua making use of the candle, the menorah of Sukkot, and then tying that into Hanukkah and being there for the feast, and Him being the light of the world, us rekindling that light of the world, so to speak, shining our light. So how do we do this? Now, I want to make this point. I want to emphasize this point in case there's misunderstanding. We are not going to truly shine our light and change people's lives by simply flicking our Vicks.
Yes.
Okay? But there's a principle within Judaism that says physical action leads to spiritual transformation. Okay? We have to begin something for something to change within us.
Say that one more time?
I have no idea what I said. So physical action leads to spiritual transformation.
Okay.
Okay?
Is that kind of the hand teaches the heart?
Yeah.
When I said that if you train the hand, it'll teach the heart.
Mm.
That physical action will eventually ideally train the heart
Yeah.
to behave a certain way.
Yeah. And so there's actually a story that our sages say about a lady who, a man, and I have to get this right, it's been years since I read this, but something about a man who was hideously ugly that married a lady and put on a mask and he was not necessarily like Phantom of the Opera type thing, but he was like he had this scowl that was just ingrained on his face, and he was a very not nice man. Okay, let's just put it that way. But he created a mask, and he had somebody create a mask that helped his face to smile all the time, where his face looked like he was smiling, he was kind. And he used that to attract a lady that he was in love with. And that he got married, and he wore the mask for years, and she would always ask him to take it off, and he was like, I can't, because I need this to help me and all this. And eventually he takes it off, and his face had become what he had been wanting to become. He had been sort of pretending, if you will, to be, because his actions had continued to work to transform who he was.
So even if you know something's right, it's not based on how you feel. You do it just because it's right.
Right. Now, to have the feeling along with it is ideal.
Yes.
Right?
But
But there are
that's
times...
the motion of it.
Exactly. It has to set the steps in motion. So prayer, daily set times of prayer is one. I mean, you don't always feel like stopping what you're doing and spending time in prayer and reciting the same thing that you just recited before, yesterday, or this afternoon, or whatever. But with that motion, it trains the heart, it trains the mind, it creates discipline, it creates delight. Okay? So I learned this lesson back when I attended a certain church that I'll never forget. This guy taught on the 3 Ds. He said there's a process to getting anywhere in life. It begins with these 3 Ds. It's desire. You have to desire something, where you want to go, what you want to accomplish, what you want to do, whatever. Then you have to have the discipline to work towards it. And then once that discipline is installed, then you will have delight in what you're doing. Okay? So it's like going to the gym, It's like, I want to work out. I want to be in shape. Well, who doesn't? You know what I mean? But are you going to work to get there?
Yeah.
No. And I did that for years. And finally got into the gym I'm telling you, it took about a year for me to actually enjoy it. Because I absolutely hated every single second of it. Okay? But now I enjoy it. I don't get to do it half as often as I should. Are you saying, amen, or you got a question?
Well, I was just going to, when you're free.
Go for it. Go for it.
You know, you were talking about the light, of course, mentioning the Lord created everything with what he said, and he said, let there be light, and there was light. And he blew into the man his breath, which gave him life. So we take our breath that he blew in us, which is actually his breath, and we bless him. You know, we praise the Lord, we glorify God with our words, and we speak his word, and we speak the things that aren't as though they were.
Right.
And then they will manifest.
We return to him what he has given us.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Okay, so let's go back to my question. I want to hear, I've got some things right here, but I want to hear from you first. What are some practical ways we can shine the light that we have held within us, the light of Torah, the light of Yeshua, the Torah made flesh, to others? What are some practical ways? How can we do that? It's harder than it sounds, isn't it?
Well, I just talk too much.
It's all right.
I found just in my own life, my own personal life, just finding people who have a physical need in their life and filling that physical need to the best of my ability and my giftings.
Yes.
And for some reason, that filling that physical need has spiritual ramifications to it.
That's good.
I will say, up here in the Panhandle, it's extremely challenging for me to walk this narrow path because people are very
Traditional.
very. They are adamant it is. If you are a believer in Christ, you must do these things. Like I've been all over. I've been in a whole bunch in the West, in Colorado, and Oklahoma, even down south of Tampa. And Christians who are in churches are kind of like holding hands with Messianics. It's kind of like, let's push aside our differences. I accept you. Like they're not like so uncomfortable that they feel like you've got some kind of play. Here, there's a big wall.
Yeah.
You know, basically. But like you said, there's a lot of elderly people out here in this area that are lonely. And time. If you don't have money, you can go sit with someone in a nursing home. You can go sit with somebody who's a shut-in at the house who's 90 years old. And, you know, just even, a lot of them don't even want you to help them around the house. They just want somebody to sit there and hold their hand and talk to them.
Right.
That's essential, I think.
I agree. I totally agree. Because we're supposed to take care of the widows and the orphans.
Yes.
Right?
I think sometimes, we talked about it earlier today, is doing that thing that we know that drives us crazy. Just going and correcting it ourselves and not expecting or forcing somebody else to do what we think is right. But us just doing the action ourselves, like we talked about the ketchup bottle.
So you're going to have to be a little bit more specific, but keep it general as well.
Right.
Okay? So nobody has any clue what you're talking about.
Right. So we're going to, I don't know how to say it, but we're going to actually do an act that we feel like somebody else should be doing.
Okay. So basically taking up the slack.
Right.
Okay? And so if somebody's supposed to be serving at the synagogue in a certain capacity, or I don't know if you call this a synagogue or whatever, but anyway, you, instead of waiting on somebody else, we should all be eager and jumping to do that thing. Okay? So here's an example. We had a sign-up sheet passing around. Okay?
Every time you said it, I'm like, oh.
That should have been filled up in about 10 seconds. Okay? And that's not to be unkind to anybody, but that's what I'm talking about. You know, we should be servants and be willing to do whatever it takes. I mean, in the days of the Holy Temple, when the assignments were given out in the mornings for the priestly duties, they would be all assigned different things, but there was one at the beginning of the day, the first thing of the day, that wasn't necessarily an assigned task. They would basically get to take out the trash. Okay? And it was a race. They said, go, and the first person to get there and do it got to do it. And these people were eager to do it. Eager to take out the trash. I mean, think about if you did that with your kids. Okay, on your mark, get set. You know? I mean, you know, Wish we had that problem. Yes.
I think other things that sounds like there's loyalty,
Yes.
trustworthiness,
Yes.
being honest.
Right.
You know, I think being trustworthy is very a way of showing the light.
It is.
Messiah couldn't always be trusted.
Right. Especially,
His characteristics.
exactly. Especially with our children, people that we're in a relationship with, people we're in business with, so forth. You are exactly right. So, for the sake of the recording, I don't know where, I assume it's that. He said being trustworthy, being loyal, being faithful, and those things. Yes.
Everybody has a ministry, and mine is that I feel for people. I know when somebody is hurting, and even if I go to Walmart, let's say, people will tell me their problems. I don't know why, but they do, strangers, and I do not let them go. I'll say, and I pray with you.
Very good.
And I get right there, out here, where we're at. I will pray for them.
So let me just change that a little bit. Being sensitive, right? So even when somebody, because a lot of times people could come up and want to say that and feel that they can trust you or whatever. But if you're not willing to stop and listen, just say, "Oh, that's good," and keep walking, or where I'm in a hurry, or whatever, then that doesn't do them any good. So the sensitivity is wonderful, but the better thing that I'm hearing is you're making time for people. You're being sensitive to people. You are valuing people. Yes.
I think also the most important thing to me, and I think to a lot of people, when Paul said there's three things in this world that's great: faith, hope, and love.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important one of those three is love.
Right.
I totally believe with those three, what I'm hearing from this room right now, those three things are very, very important to all of us.
Right.
It's sensitivity, as you said. We have to understand faith, hope, and love. Without that, we are not.
Right. Amen. So what did Yeshua say the two greatest commandments are? To love God and to love your neighbor. So the greatest is love, because that's what it's all about. That's why we do everything that we do. We do the commandments. We help our neighbor. We love our neighbor. We serve each other because of love. Because love should be the overriding factor in everything. And I just love what Gabriel was talking about earlier when he was, relating different things. And I saw his humility, saw his love for you guys, and teaching you that love for one another and all that kind of stuff is just the overarching, the thing that matters the most. And that's what's going to keep us together as a community, as a family, as a tribe, as a people. We're going to have to overcome everything through love. We're going to have our differences. We're going to have our skirmishes. We're going to have our disagreements. But love has to be overriding all. And that's how we can light the biggest menorah in the world and shine that light is going to be through that love that extends over all the differences that we have. Okay? Yes?
I'm just going to be extremely general, but humility and kindness goes a long way. I grew up, my parents were full-time ministers. I was the brat that ran away from God and all this stuff, but I've done it, and I've had it done to me, where people have taken this and just, and I've done it. And it's been done to me, and I've done it. And he stopped me in my tracks. What are people looking for in this world? Kindness, but humility. I mean, like you said, when we know this, it doesn't make us bigger or better. It makes us, it's supposed to humble us and make us more accountable. It makes me shake. I almost like, whoa, wait a minute on this for a little bit, because I haven't even processed all these years. I've been seeking, and all this knowledge is in me, and now it's like, but if you don't do it, what good is it?
Right.
It's just,
Clinging symbols.
Right.
oh my gosh, I don't want to be a clinging symbol.
So you guys have hit on a lot of my list. Okay? So you should feel good about that. But some of the things I listed out were acts of kindness, holding our tongue when we feel we have the right to lash out, not retaliating against those who treat us unjustly, visiting the sick and the elderly, taking care of the orphans and the widows, helping people who are unemployed find jobs, inviting people to our house and being hospitable, whether that's Shabbat, festival, weekday, whatever. The Rutledge family is doing a great job having us out. Sharing this wonderful thing called Shabbat with people, asking them to come to their homes on Erev Shabbat, Friday nights, letting them experience the joy of that, the beautiful holiness of that, the light of Shabbat. Holding our tongues to never, ever speak negatively about other people. Lashon Hara. If you haven't studied that, I highly encourage you to. You may not talk for a couple months, but you'll get over it. Okay? But the list goes on. I mean, practical example after practical example of things that we can do where a lot of times our faith tradition, unfortunately, has told us the way that we shine the light of Yeshua is by simply evangelizing, witnessing. Okay? But here's the problem with that. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Okay? And a lot of times we have evangelistic terrorists out there that just cause more problems than they fix. And so we need to evangelize, but let's change the definition of that. Let's be light, let's be salt in everything that we do, in all of our action, in the way that we uphold human dignity above our dogma, and that we love people into the kingdom rather than preach people into the kingdom.